All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. Super excited for today's show, guys. We are welcoming Larry Yatch, the CEO of SEAL Team Leaders. Larry, why don't you say hello to the CX Nation, my friend?
Hey, nation out there. I'm excited just from the time that we spent talking ahead of time. I'm looking forward to this.
So guys, Larry's got an awesome story. He's got an awesome background, and he's got a super cool business that he's going to share with us today. Spends a ton of time thinking about leadership, spends a ton of time thinking about how to work with other awesome customer-focused business leaders, plus has a really, really cool background and upbringing. So Larry, why don't you take the first couple minutes, man, set the stage for the CX Nation, give them a sense for, number one, who you are, where you came from, and some of the stepping stones and some of the early experiences that you kind of went through in your career, and definitely get into how you formed SEAL Team Leaders and your business that you're building and growing today.
Yeah, sounds good. My background, it all started for me in third grade when I saw Top Gun. Yeah, and it's interesting. My dad visited for the first time in a couple of years, and I got to take my dad and my two sons to see the new Top Gun.
We just saw it last night, Larry. My wife and I just saw it last night.
Yeah, this
flick,
weekend.
Man.
I agree. And so literally I was in third grade, I saw Top Gun. And by the time I left the theater, I decided I was going to be a fighter pilot. And then I found out about the Naval Academy, and all the best fighter pilots were in the Navy from the Naval Academy. So that was my goal from the time I was in third grade. About seventh grade, a friend of mine got me a sweatshirt that said Navy SEALs on it, just because it said Navy and had a cool logo, because late 80s, early 90s, no one knew what a Navy SEAL was. I know I didn't. Yeah. So I went to the library and literally, like, Dewey Decimal System, looked up Navy SEALs and found a book called The Men with Green Faces. And by the end of the book, it was a Vietnam era SEAL book. I was convinced that fighter pilots were pansies and I needed to be a Navy SEAL. And so that was it for me. And so I did go to the Naval Academy, got an engineering degree from there, and then went straight into the SEAL program as an officer. Graduated buds at the top of my class and got to choose whatever team I wanted to go to, and chose SEAL Team 3 based on the fact that it was responsible for the Middle East. This was in 1999. So, pre 9/11, there was, nothing really going on. And I figured if there was, it'd be in the Middle East. And as we know from history, very accurate. Like it was a very busy time. So I was a combat leader in the SEALs for 10 years until I got injured and medically retired in 2008. And it was in 2007 when I was going through a bunch of surgeries, and I knew back surgery went really bad, and the surgeon said my career was over. And it was laying in that hospital bed. My whole life, all I'd ever wanted to do was be a SEAL. That was my full on purpose, was protecting the country as a special operator. And faced with having no purpose was a rough spot. And so being able to identify that I had more to offer the country than just being a weapon was, I'd say, the turning point for me. That my ability to lead and teach others into effective leadership was really what made me successful as an officer in the SEALs. And so from that point, I decided to get into training. So built and ran a series, literally in the hospital, Bethesda Naval Hospital in 2007, decided I was going the entrepreneurial route, which is somewhat unique because I'm not a born entrepreneur. Like I didn't have businesses when I was in school. I was out playing, Navy SEAL in the woods. I chose entrepreneurship as a mechanism to produce the life that I wanted, a life of freedom. And in that, I think that's one of the, at least the misconceptions, is that as an entrepreneur, you're free. Like I found that was a big lie, right? Being an entrepreneur is kind of the least free I've ever been. And that's really the what inspired ultimately our third company was SEAL Team Leaders, was creating an environment to allow entrepreneurs to be free and gain freedom from their business. And so that's how we started SEAL Team Leaders, was to be able to leverage all of our skills in behavior change, training, and team optimization to bring that freedom to entrepreneurs that most of them started their businesses to have.
I love it. I mean, so number one, Larry, thank you for sharing that. I think so many different follow-up questions right out of the gates here. I think I know we say this all the time, guys, in the show, but talk about the different walks of life for how people find what they're doing, building, or leading today, right? Like, so when you bring up just the military piece and the Navy SEAL piece and the special ops piece, like, what an incredible foundation for, because let's call it what it is. Everybody on the show that's listening knows whether you're leading and managing a business or whether you're building and owning and scaling your business, man, building companies, building teams, building customer portfolios. It is one of the most difficult battles that anybody can enter into. And it's funny, let's call it, here's the other part, Larry. Nobody talks about this, but let's just call it out. Like, this is why business owners and entrepreneurs and founders are in a minority. It is one of the most difficult challenges. It's one of the most trying. It breaks families apart, breaks marriages apart. It makes, parents not be able to see that. Like, come on, let's call it. This is some of the sacrifice that goes into actually building, dynamite, sustainable company that can actually give you everything that you want, right? And I love that you called this part out too, because I think it's funny, man. Depending on who you ask, and you say, well, why'd you start your business? I like that you're super direct and clear about the fact that you knew that it would be a vehicle to get you the things that you wanted and the places that you wanted to go in life. I know for me with CXChronicles, 100% the same thing. I was literally just joking with Larry, guys, before today's show about, for me, I loved building other companies, CX and CS teams, and I loved working with all these different executive leadership teams. But you do get to a point in your life where eventually you start to understand kind of what drives you, what you want more of, what you want less of. And this is why building companies and being a founder or being an aspiring business owner is just one of the most incredible ways of really kind of fulfilling a lot of your dreams and doing the things that you want to do. So awesome stuff out of the gates. Larry, why don't we start with the first pillar team? I'd love to learn more about your team at SEAL Team Leaders. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how you've built out the different roles or built out some of the different focus areas? And I'd love for you to kind of just spend a minute kind of talking about some of the people that you've pulled around all of this incredible ideas and mission that you work on with your customers today.
I'd say, first off, we have a belief. We have a belief that your success in life is 100% dependent on your ability to team. And I think this is a fundamental principle for everyone. If you look at anywhere in your life that you're experiencing struggle or pain or suffering, you are not coordinating action well with those around you. It's always tied together. Anywhere you're experiencing success in your life, fulfillment, joy, accomplishment, you are coordinating action at a high level. And so at the most fundamental level, your ability to coordinate action determines not only the accomplishments you produce in life, but the experience of success in your life. And that to me is unbelievably important based on the fact that as an entrepreneur, we have a million things vying for our attention, and our attention and focus is our most limited and valuable resource. And understanding that at the core of every problem you have in your business is a coordination of action issue, is discord with some team. And that team could be either your team to your client, or inside of one of your departments, or between departments, or between leadership and the department, the actual team. Those four areas house every problem you've got. And part of why I think what you do is so important, right? Being able to create those relationships with the clients and having that be smooth is one of the most critical aspects of producing success in a business.
100%. It's funny, man. And I appreciate you calling that out, but you're right. It's like this notion of teamwork, collaboration, communication. I talk about this all the time, Larry. So our listeners are going to roll their eyes when I say it, but this is super important. Establishing areas of accountability, authority, and the ability to really make sure that you're identifying who's responsible for what, right, is huge, man. And I would argue one of the biggest jobs of every business owner and every executive leadership team member in the world, man, right? Like, you're there to make some of these big, difficult, hairy, stressful decisions, no doubt about it. And then let's call it what it is. The bigger these companies get, the bigger some of these organizations get, you have fiduciary responsibility for just a tremendous amount of value, right? If you're talking about a guy or gal that's running a business that has north of 1,000 employees, like, this stuff gets really, really serious. But still, at the end of the day, laying out those lines in the sand, making it super clear who owns what, who needs to communicate with who. It's one of the easiest places to start when you're thinking about like effective team collaboration, team experience. I love that you bring that up too, man, because it's super important, right? If you don't have a plethora of positive experiences occurring regularly on a team, you're not going to have people that want to stick around that team very long. They're going to look for another team where they can get that good stuff. So I love it.
So let's just, I'll jump on the bandwagon and have your audience roll their eyes more. I don't know if that's the goal of this, but I got to put my 2 cents in here. The biggest limitation to every company that we work with is their ability to hold, pass, or accept responsibility. Like that is the biggest limitation to every organization. Like when I look at the team that I was operating in the SEALs versus the teams that I built initially in my initial companies, and now with all the companies that we see, the biggest difference is the level of responsibility that's held. As a SEAL, every time one of my SEALs committed to holding a responsibility, they did. Like there's for 10 years of operating, in what would have been countless commitments made, I can think of 5 times that a SEAL didn't do what they said they were going to do. Yep. Like it was like breathing. Like I didn't have to think about it. If I gave someone clear direction, clear standard of performance, they committed to doing it. They did it 100% of the time. I get into the civilian world. If someone does 80% of what they're supposed to do, 50% of the time, they're a high performer. Like that blows my mind. Yeah. And so that ability, because why do we have teams? The only reason we have teams is to share responsibilities because we are insufficient to do it alone.
Yep.
So that if teams are what produce success, your ability to hold, pass, and accept responsibilities is the only reason you team. If you don't do that well, then you can't have success.
I love that. I think it's an incredible learning lesson for sure. I think the other thing it immediately makes me think about on the organizational side of things, Larry, is like, this is why having clarity, visibility, and socializing the hell out of your OKRs or your strategic objectives or your primary goals and mission as a business, whether they're broken into monthly, quarterly, annual. This is why if you're not already doing things like that, you almost don't even allow for the team to understand and kind of take a look at like the greater map or the greater direction of where the ship is heading, and decide whether or not that's a ship that they want to be on. Are those are the type of waters they want to be in? Is it the type of direction and speed and pace that they want to be a part of? Or isn't it, right? And I think that this is why it's just such an awesome, idea for our listeners to take back, which is that's part of our job, guys. It's literally that is arguably our biggest job as business owners and executives, is to make sure that we're actually constantly reminding people of where we're going. By the way, I think it's both ways, Larry. I think it's customers, so externally, and then it's employees all damn day internally. It's making sure that you're triangulating on those 2 different views. Larry, I'd love to dive into the second CX pillar of tools, man. So you've been able to work with all these awesome businesses. You've worked with several different types of executives, different types of industry sets, and you and the team at SEAL are building out your own business. Spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the tools that you've kind of leveraged, or some of the different ways that you've seen some of your clients really kind of leverage tools to grow a business, scale a business, and really to kind of help build out an incredible customer experience.
So I am, which then means that the culture of the organization follows from the leadership. I am a systems-based person. If I have to do something more than twice, I'm gonna build a tool so I never have to do it again. So when you say tools, like I get all excited because that's all I mean. Our core function is behavior change, influencing behavior change. We have 35 structured tools, 3 pieces of software we built, all designed to systematically change behavior. But the ones I want to share, I think I'll share, the ones that I think will have the greatest impact is when I looked at the teams that occupy the civilian sector versus in the special operations community, there were 3 gaps that exist in a huge way. And we already covered the first one, which is the ability to hold responsibility.
Yep.
Like I just took that for granted. So one of the most functional tools we use is a scripted format for passing responsibilities.
Okay.
Because if you don't have a real structured format for passing and accepting responsibilities, then you're just guessing if it's going to be able to be held or not. You're hoping.
Yep.
So that'd be the first tool that one we leverage internally, and it's usually the first tool we work with organizations to implement, is a structured format for passing, holding, accepting responsibility. The next piece that I took for granted in the SEALs is that I could give someone direct feedback and that they would implement it.
Yep.
It blew me away when I sat in one of my first meetings with one of my employees. They had made a commitment to hold a responsibility. They didn't. I brought them in and I was simply asking why. And they cried. They were crying in front of me. And I was blown away. Like, I should be crying that you said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. I don't understand how. I'm not yelling at you. You're not in trouble. I just wondering why.
I'm assuming there's no crying in the Navy SEAls either, right, Larry?
No, I mean, there's, like they say, there's no crying in baseball. There is no emotion in the Navy SEAL, much less crying. Like, you can get to show anything.
Yeah.
So the second piece is a systematic tool to be able to give feedback in a way that it can be received, that creates connection.
Yeah.
Most ways people give feedback, at best the person can receive it, but they always feel distance created, not connection.
Definitely.
And so that's a very, very important tool. The third one is, we just took for granted that you planned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we plan for everything.
Yeah.
Like, if we finish a training mission and we were going to go to get burritos, we put a plan together as to how to go get burritos as a group.
Yep.
But you've got some of the highest performing people in the world, and they're taking the time out to actually go plan to go get burritos. You get into a business, other than strategic planning, they rely on the individual expertise of the manager to come up with how to get it done.
Yep.
And there's no systematic process for planning. So that'd be my third tool that we usually bring into organizations that I think is critical, is the ability to systematically plan, not for big things, but for small things.
I love it. I had a college professor that I remember vividly, Larry, to this day. His main lesson that he definitely put into me for the rest of my life was, he would say, proper planning prevents poor performance. And he would tell us regularly, like once a week, if you don't learn anything from me all semester, I don't care. But what you need to remember me for is proper planning prevents poor performance. This was in a business class, so he was thinking about it not from a military type of way, but from more of like a business preparation way. And the idea of like, look, the more time you take to sharpen the axe, the faster it is to cut down the tree. Or another way of thinking about it, going back to our team, some of our team discussion parts, like, if you guys think that you're going to be able to run a team, manage a team, grow a team, build a team, or better yet, get a bunch of human adults to just cooperate and to play nicely and to not hurt each other's feelings or make each other cry, whether it's right or wrong. He talked about this notion of the preparation. So I love that. I think it's brilliant and something that every one of us needs to be thinking about and really trying to instill into our team every day. The other big thing that
think about how this gets back to what we're talking about. What's the sole purpose of a plan? The sole purpose of a plan is to coordinate action.
Yep.
The only reason that we have a team is to share responsibilities and coordinate action. Through coordination of action, we get to experience success through producing accomplishments. So there's a direct line through everything we're talking about.
Yep.
We can't hold responsibilities without planning, and we can't have success without being able to hold responsibilities.
100%. And you know, I was just going to say the other thing that the feedback part that you mentioned, the direct, candid, whether it's 360 feedback reports, whether it's your quarterly, team-based reflections, whatever the hell you guys are calling them. Most people actually need direct, candid feedback to understand whether or not, number one, they're doing a phenomenal job, or number two, where they're falling short. I think every one of us has to think about what delivery mechanism, and obviously people are all different. So you need to know which people are potentially your criers versus which people are going to ask for more, or they might ask for it to be even more candid, or they might ask for you to drop all the fluff and be direct as possible so that they can actually get better. Right. So I think that's the other piece, but it's funny, Larry, and I don't know what your experience has been with this, but a lot of companies don't do a good job with that. And I think I might know where. And I think a lot of times too, if you think about it, man, it does start with the C-suite, right? If your C-suite does that really well, has open, candid, highly communicative, and super direct types of exchanges, your extended leadership team probably has that. And if your extended leadership team has that, then guess what? Most of your troops, most of your boots on the ground, they're going to probably get that from their middle management, right? So it really is a top down. But guys, these are all things that I think as customer focused business leaders, the people that are constantly thinking about leveraging and triangulating CX and EX, This is how you can absolutely separate yourself from the pack. This is how you can become a completely different type of modern leader. And the bottom line is everybody and anybody is going to respect when you have an individual who is going to be direct, they're going to be candid, and they're going to give you the bottom line. Because that's frankly, everything else is so hard. Cutting through fat, cutting through noise, cutting through incomplete or sometimes even false messaging and feedback. That's hard, man. That just complicates this stuff, Larry. So
the key piece I don't want to get lost is, the question I'll ask is, how do you know if you're giving effective feedback? And the obvious easy response is that behavior changes, right? Yeah. So if I'm giving you feedback and your behavior changes while I'm being effective, but that's only half of the equation. Performance is half of the equation. Connection is the other half. If your behavior changes, but at the end of it, you feel further than me, like more disconnected to me than you were before, then I didn't do a good job giving feedback. So when people are out there looking like, am I doing a good job of feedback? One, is the behavior change? Two, do they feel closer to you after the feedback you give them, or do they feel more distant?
Yep.
That's the critical aspect. That's where it gets really hard. And that ends up being, the way we solve that is linguistics. Like, linguistic patterns are necessary to produce effective change and connection. But if you can do both of those, then you're crushing feedback.
Love it. I love it. Larry, I'd love to dive into the third CX pillar process, man. So like, and we've kind of already started to hit on this, but like, even as far back as the SEALs and Navy and some of these awesome companies that you've been a part of helping to build, I'd love to just hear kind of some of the things that you've sort of learned over your journey around process. So think the way that you capture some of these expectations, the way that you document, the way that you can give other smart people views, windows, or content, or usable, digestible content into understanding what the story is, or understanding what the standard operating procedures are. Spend a few minutes talking about sort of how you've kind of tackled process as you've gotten deeper into your career, and some ideas or some tips and tricks that you kind of have found along the way that could be really valuable for our listeners.
To me, process is everything. And I would say, if you don't mind, I'm going to go on a higher, I want to answer this on a fundamental level, because I think this will have a bigger impact than some tips or tricks.
Absolutely.
Is your goal in your business to be relevant or irrelevant? The absolute goal is to be irrelevant. Like, as a CEO, if I'm absolutely irrelevant to my business, then I've created a sound, strong business. As a manager, if I'm irrelevant to my team, then I've created a sound, strong team. Yeah. Most of us, because of our need to be valued, our need to be wanted, our need to be important, create an environment where our relevance is critical to success. Yep. Our goal should be irrelevance. And so finding anywhere in your world where there's a need for you is opportunity to identify process, structure, automation to get yourself out of it. And you can think of this from the same perspective of being a parent. My job as a parent is not to be relevant in my children's lives. My job is to be completely irrelevant in their life. And from that position where they have no need for me, we can have pure connection and love. But if they need me, then there's always a barricade between that connection. So my job in life is to become irrelevant to everyone around me, from business to personal.
I love that. I mean, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. You hear so often, especially for folks that are building companies or building teams, managing and leading teams, you have to find time to work on your business, not in your business. And when I hear you say being relevant or irrelevant, I don't think about it as a negative way at all. Larry, I was just joking with you before we started diving in today, man. I would love to be able to continue to work with all these incredible companies, but have my team do it and have our solutions do it, and have some of our, and the reality is, obviously, like so many of our listeners, we're building this stuff. So I've got to be a part of it, because that's where the learning and the finding and the progress, right? Coming back to this stuff every damn day of the week and just inching forward, right? That's because that ultimately, we don't probably talk about it enough in the show, but like, the action is what drives everything. So like, for people that are on the fence on, maybe I want to start a business, maybe I want to be an executive, get ready to provide and take a tremendous amount of action every single day. It's the only way that you will actually be in that world. I don't disagree with Larry, where it is still common where sometimes, showing up is unfortunately 80% of the battle. So depending on where you're at in your own corporate ladder or your own career trajectory, I think it's an old Woody Allen quote, but like it really truly is. If you're going to be the type of guy or gal that shows up 80% of the time, you're statistically improving your chances of being able to accelerate and move ahead. But I love this idea of really focusing on almost finding the areas where you can be completely irrelevant and letting the business, the process, the team, the solutions, and all of the things that you've engineered over time run themselves. That's ultimately what the goal is. So I love it. Has there been maybe one or two examples, Larry, where you've seen certain clients, or even with some of the work that you guys do at SEAL, has there been like certain exercises or certain tools or certain different types of ways that you can kind of get a team to unite around how you can rapidly kind of improve or optimize the way that the processes are functioning? A lot of our listeners are startups, man. They will openly admit to you they don't have any playbooks, they don't have any knowledge base, they don't have any FAQs written because they're figuring stuff out every day. So I'd love to has there been an example of something that you've seen that can at least kickstart this stuff or give out?
I would say, so again, I'm going to answer this on not fundamental, but I'm going to answer this on a level that's, if this doesn't exist, you can't do what you're talking about. Most people, most managers or leaders of an organization or heads of a startup believe that we would be perfect if I was managing my team to 100% of their capacity, right? Like I'm optimizing every minute of their day.
Yep.
The reality is that that's ineffective, right? Most people, most organizations are over capacity, right? So someone ends their day and they still have 20% of their tasks undone.
Yep.
Right. That's really poor management. Tight management would say, well, at the end of the day, I'm done, right? I've done all my tasks. In reality, we need to manage our people to 80% capacity, meaning they have to have excess capacity in their day to, one, help others on their team, right? If I'm at 100% capacity and you come to me with a problem, I have to say no, because if I say yes to helping you, then I break a commitment on my side.
Yep.
The other thing is I don't have time to learn. Like I can't learn if I'm on 100% capacity. And if I can't learn, I can't get more effective, more efficient. I can't innovate. The third part that you miss if I'm at 100% capacity is I can't spend time on my role. Like you're saying, in my business versus on my business, in my role versus on my role.
Yep.
If I don't have part of my time to spend on my role, then I can't possibly put together processes, structures, SOPs. So the thing to remember for the startup is slow down to go fast.
Yep.
Like you have to slow down. You have to decrease your overall commitments in order to start building a sustainable organization that can then speed up. Yep. So I'd say that'd be my answer, is like, don't worry about SOPs until you manage your people to have capacity to start working on their SOPs. Because if you put it on top of their already over capacity selves, they're going to leave.
Yep. Awesome ideas. Just one quick note on this. It's funny, as we've gotten more and more at bats with these incredible growth focused companies that we work with at CXC. What we've definitely learned over the last 2+ years, Larry, is establishing, identifying, and validating specific CX and CS focused calls to action. We call them our CXC CTAs, right? Calls to action. Like you might have the team, you might have the leader, who or has anyone identified all these different calls to action that are low-hanging fruit right in front of you? But then the next part, I love that you talk about this capacity best practice, which is oftentimes, more often than not, is we can start identifying and teeing up, prioritizing, breaking out, compartmentalizing all the different facets of how you need to accomplish the CTAs. But it's super common to have these companies where, because everybody's already at 100% capacity, all these brilliant, smart, awesome guys and gals that should literally be helping to expedite your revenue growth, building better products for tomorrow, figuring all the cool shit out that your customers are asking for, they can't even tackle the next 5 CTAs that are literally going to propel you in the future. So this is gold right here, Larry, that I want everyone to kind of stop this part of the show, re-listen to it, think about how you can bring that back into your team tomorrow, because that's like a brilliant piece of advice. Larry,
slow down to go fast.
Slow down to go fast. I love it. And every one of us has to do that. I'd love to dive into the fourth and the final CX pillar, feedback, man. I'm excited about this because you kind of hit on some of this with how you guys manage this in the Navy and in the SEALs. But I'd love just to hear you talk for a couple minutes about the way that you've kind of sort of learned and built your own little playbook around customer feedback. And I'd love to kind of have you spend a minute or two talking about the same type of thing that you've seen with how you can solicit employee feedback. Spend a few minutes kind of talking about what you've learned about
so
how you get at this.
On the customer side, I like it, as opposed to getting traditional feedback where you ask someone, how did we do, or a survey, or like, I like to think of customer feedback from a perspective of metrics. Like, what numbers can I look at from our side to validate that we're hitting our goals or objectives? That to me is more useful than someone telling us something, because a lot of times people are just nice. Like, we built one of our companies in Minneapolis, and it is like, they are so nice there that you could have done a horrible job and they're like, oh, everything was great, like it was great, perfect. We love it, and then they leave and never come back. And so I learned to trust more on metrics that I can see on performance than someone's direct feedback. So I'd say that would be an innovation that we've had around customer feedback, is numbers, not words. When it comes to employee feedback, I'm going to measure that based off of the connection of the team.
Okay.
So how strong of a connection does my employee feel to their coworkers and to the organization, and then to us as management within the organization? If that connection is strong, then they're like voting their feedback with that perceived connection. And that connection comes down to authenticity, vulnerability, and trust. So how do I assess if one of my team members feels strongly connected? Is going to be based on the degree to which they are authentic, the degree to which they are vulnerable, and the degree to which they lead with trust as opposed to distrust.
Yeah.
So again, I'm odd in that, as opposed to being receiving it, being reactive to feedback, I'm being proactive in it and looking at underlying things that wouldn't normally directly be tied to feedback.
I love that. You just gave me a bunch of different ideas for how every single solitary, business leader out there can be thinking about how they could build their own unique or custom employee experience scorecards or team scorecards, or whatever you guys are doing for your current team validation or assessment strategies right now, Larry. Those are brilliant ideas, man. I love the authentic piece, because let's call it what it is. We spend literally more time with the people that we work with than we do with our wives and our kids and our brothers and our sisters, which is ridiculous, but it's the truth. And every one of us goes through it. The other thing too, is there's something about comfortability, man. I'm thinking about this because I literally just saw Top Gun last night too. So this is fresh in my head. But I'm saying this because let's call it what it is. This is smashing box office record. So a lot of our listeners probably have already seen it, but like, think about the point in the flick where Maverick brings the group to the beach to drink beer and play football and hang out and be human together. Like, just be normal together. Get away from the F-18s, get away from the stress, the pressure, the bullshit, the minutia, and like figure out how to like bond with someone on a human level, like as a friend, as a colleague, as a like. So, and then you think about right after that is when they started getting it together, pulling it together, figuring out the actual specifics and granularities of the mission, but trusting each other and building a team and really supporting each other. So like, awesome ideas there, man. Larry, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. I've been thrilled to have you on the show. Awesome ideas. Before we let you go, where can people find out more about you, sir? Where can people find out about SEAL team leaders? And then spend a minute or two talking about your book too, man. I want to make sure that people know where they can find your book.
Yeah, so that's actually what I was going to direct people. We are so proud and so excited that our services have really been exclusive to large companies. You know, we for years have just been working with companies that have a lot of money to spend on optimizing their teams, creating clear coordinated action. And that wasn't fulfilling our mission. Our mission is permanent positive change in people's lives. And we were having that permanent positive change, but just not a lot of people by the nature of how we met with our clients. And so having the opportunity to bring these very expensive lessons into the reach of everyone through first the book, which is how leadership actually works. And so the book we launched just over a month ago. It's been doing great. You can find it on Amazon. The other best way to get to us is howleadershipactuallyworks.com. The book website has information about the book, some of the software assessment tools that we leverage with businesses. And then the other cool thing that we're really excited about is we started a group coaching offer. So the ability to have individuals at a very low price point get the same type of service that we're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars for companies, to do it in groups. And they get direct access to me once a month, to my two partners, plus some of our team. So that's been one of the things that we're most excited about, low cost opportunity for individuals to gain deeper understanding of these things and bring it back to their teams to create that permanent positive change.
I love it. Well, look, Larry, it's awesome work that you guys are doing. Love the story. Huge thank you for coming on the show and sharing it with all of us. And I'm going to look forward to continuing our relationship and our discussion in the future, my friend.
I agree. Thank you.